Hey, what's up, everybody? Back with another dose. We've got the port strike. We're going to talk about it today. We've been talking about that for a few weeks. And actually, if you want to go back a year or more, we've been talking about the second half of 2024 is going to be insane. And we have just more than 3 months left to the end of the year and plenty of time for a lot of things to happen. And I think we're about ready to see some big things drop coming up very soon. I've been warning about the month of October for several months now. There's a few of you that may not have seen every video, so I'm going to try to spend more time in detail about the possible port strike. I put that out there as one of the big things that could pop up in October to derail either deflation or inflation. I think it's going to be more inflation, unfortunately, just like all the homes that are wiped out in this recent storm, Helene. And, not much deflation on the horizon as far as I can see. Deflation would be a good thing. We're going to talk about how the U.S. and many countries are desperately fighting against deflation because remember, deflation, you're paying less for things. That makes the economic growth look lower. And of course, we know that inflation and borrowed money and spending is the key to, quote, economic growth because it's about people spending money. Higher prices are good for people spending money, more tax revenue, etc. Right? So let's get into it, folks. The port strike, how likely is it to happen? Well, I guess you could say I've been a victim of the normalcy bias, right? Over the past few years, and actually you can go all the way back to 2008. Every time there's a big economic situation, talk about the housing bust in 2008, massive rescue packages come in. Of course, the banks were rescued, massive lowering of interest rates were at rock bottom for 10 plus years. 2020, health crisis instead of deflation. Housing, again, the housing bust, I mentioned this, housing bust should have been twice as bad in 2020 than it was in 2008 with the number of people that couldn't pay their mortgages. The foreclosures would have been more than double if it weren't for the freeze-ups on the foreclosures, etc. Rent stimulus programs, you guys all know this, rescue programs. So the response to every crisis has been intervention. And in fact, many people are saying that the White House should intervene in this port strike. Now, first, let's get into the port strike details here. It's going to be massive, folks, if it happens. Now, again, I have been saying that I don't think it's going to happen. They're going to do something. They're going to come in at the last minute, just like all these government shutdowns. How many warnings have we heard about the government shutdown? There's been a few. And it's been a few weeks and it gets resolved. They throw more money out there. They pass the spending bill as always. Debt continues to explode higher. And you see it go on for not just years and years, decades and decades and decades, that you think that nothing really bad is going to happen. Now, if you want to talk about something bad happening, and people on this channel have said, oh, nothing ever happens. You've been making the same video for years. No, something bad has happened. It's just happened so slowly that you didn't notice. Folks, this debt and the inflation and the prices that we're paying right now, it's bad. It's bad. Some people are still able to maintain pretty good lifestyle, but a lot of people, more than ever before, a lot of people are stressed out, barely scraping by. But let's talk about these port strikes here. And this is going to be massive, folks. East Coast ports, including the Port of Virginia, poised for a shutdown. That's a headline here. So a lot of the news outlets are painting this as something that's very likely to happen, right? And just like the banks in 2020, not 2020, 2023, just last year, should have been massive, a massive domino effect. A lot of banks should have collapsed after that. But remember, they came in, the FDIC came in with the Fed, the Treasury, they all got together and bailed out the billionaires, right? Even though FDIC was supposed to limit it at 250,000, massive change in the rules at the last minute to rescue the billionaires, all the depositors, all the big money in the banks. Otherwise, it would have been panic, Mad Max panic to get money out of the bank if those people would have lost their money. So will the same thing happen this time? Will somebody big step in, the powers that be, the quote-unquote leaders? Will they step in and stop this? A labor strike is set to shut down several Port of Virginia facilities and 13 other ports along the East Coast starting Monday at midnight. That's, folks, that's October 1st. Tuesday is the first day of October. What I've been telling you about October. This is just one of the risks. We've got a lot of other risks we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. The United States Maritime Alliance refuses to address a half a century of wage subrogation where ocean carriers' profits skyrocketed from millions to mega billions of dollars, while the longshore workers' wages remained flat. Sounds pretty familiar, right? Now, if you've been listening to the candidates in this current race for the White House, you hear, especially on the left-wing side, probably just all on the left-wing side, you hear price gouging is the problem, right? We're going after price gouging. Could they be trying to get out in the front of what's about to happen with massive price spikes with all the shortages that we're going to see if this strike happens? And more people now are jumping on the opinion that it will happen. But again, my probably doubt is every other time there's been a crisis, it's always been met with massive stimulus or some sort of intervention, some sort of last minute agreement. But we're just a few days away, folks, a couple days away, right? You're probably watching this on Monday, so we're less than 24 hours from this possibly kicking off. Now, it doesn't mean that prices are going to spike that night or that day. No, it could take a while to show up, but within just a couple of weeks, and the estimate's saying it's as short amount of time as 16 to 17 days, you're likely going to start seeing the effects of goods not making it to the shelves. The Port of Virginia announced last week to wind down operations if the strike isn't averted. If the strike does go ahead, Portsmouth Marine Terminal and Virginia's 2 inland ports will continue to operate as normal. Tim Kaine said last week the strike would be a very damaging thing for the state and the nation. JP Morgan says the strike could cost the U.S. economy up to $5 billion per day, nearly 70% of the nation's container exports, and about 56% of container cargo imports move through ports on the East and Gulf Coast. Folks, 70% of the exports and 56% of the imports. That's another thing, too. If the exports slow down, countries are not going to be sending stuff over to us. They're not going to be exporting to us, so that will affect imports. But also the ports being shut down is going to affect imports anyways. On Thursday, the United States Maritime Alliance filed an unfair labor practice charge with the National Labor Relations Board against the ILA, asking the board to compel the union to come back to the bargaining table. The union walked away from the negotiations in June as protests over the use of automated gates at some ports, basically trying to eliminate the human workers and, of course, the wages. And why are we seeing record amounts of strikes this year? Because of the cost of living. All right, we're told there's going to be a soft landing and that people are doing better because inflation's coming down. Folks, why do we still see record amounts of strikes? And this could be the mother of all strikes right here. That's going to affect a lot of people here. More over here. Got some notes over here that I made, just reading off here. The potential work stoppage will affect 45,000 port workers at 36 ports, responsible for handling more than 40% of total containerized goods entering the United States. The strike also comes at a particularly challenging time for ocean supply chains, which have already faced significant disruptions this year due to conflicts in the Red Sea, drought in the Panama Canal, and Baltimore bridge collapse. Yeah, I forgot about that. That was another thing too. That's another thing. They said the Baltimore bridge collapse was going to create monster problems for the shipping and cause massive inflation. We haven't seen it, but will we see something finally break? If we look back at history, something always comes in and massively disrupts the economy. Just look at 2020. It was more the response to what happened in 2020. It was the big problem. 2008, they came in, they rescued the banks, of course. What's going to happen this time? But will the rescues actually be worse than the problem to begin with? Many would argue that if you just let the banks fail, it would have been worse at first, but then from then forward, it would have been better because less inflation, right? The less people can borrow money, the less inflation. The more people can borrow money, the more stimulus, the lower the interest rates, the lower the reserve requirement, the worse inflation is because people are spending money they don't have. More borrowing equals more inflation, right? Economics 101. An example here, look what's happening over in China. Massive stimulus for the China economy because consumers Similar to here in the US, consumers loaded up on debt, starting to slow down on their spending. Chinese property stocks, out of the journal, surge. Where'd my headline go? As barrage of stimulus continues, right? Two major Chinese cities lifted key curbs on buying homes to boost demand. What else are they doing in China? They're cutting the reserve requirement for the banks. Does that sound familiar? That's what we did here in Zero. We cut the bank reserve requirement to, in 2000, we cut the bank reserve requirement to zero to make it easier for banks to lend. Therefore, more people borrowing money. Therefore, the illusion of economic growth. In the meantime, it's just debt being accumulated in the background. Let's just play you a clip here that kind of explains what's going on here. And let me just bring this up here first so you can take a look at it. Look at this. And this is, what's been happening here. Stop housing price decline. Breaking out of China's debt deflation loop. They don't want deflation. In fact, they even say it. Their goal is to stop housing prices decline. Because when real estate goes, the rest of the economy goes. Not just here in the U.S. This is what's happening over there. Improve employment situation. Implement a forceful rate cut. Strengthen counter-cyclical monetary and fiscal policies, folks. But the big one here at the top, stop housing price decline. Wait, people can't afford homes. People need affordable housing. Right? What's all this we've been talking about? The need for affordable housing. We need affordable housing. We need to build more housing so it's affordable. So there's not such a shortage. Remember, the shortage was the reason. But yet they want to stop housing price declines. Makes no sense. Completely opposite of what we're being told. Also, rate cuts here in the US, rate cuts in China. We're told that there's a soft landing ahead. But yet we need emergency rate cuts. We need big rate cuts. In fact, Powell and crew just came out recently and said expect more rate cuts, another one in December and beyond. So if there was going to be a soft landing, which they're telling us there's going to be, why do we need rate cuts, right? Again, completely opposite, doesn't make any sense. Let's go ahead and just listen to a little bit here on what's being discussed about what's happening over there in China. And then we'll bring it back here to the U.S. here.
Of the economy. This goes back to my earlier point about if all the measures announced so far can be effective enough to break the debt and deflation loop so far we've been experiencing. So as I emphasized earlier, we need to...
Did you hear her? She stumbled a little bit. She said the debt deflation loop
so far we've been experiencing. All the measures announced so far can be effective enough to break the debt and deflation loops so far.
Right. So their solution is to make it easier to borrow money so people can go into debt easier. Folks, you can't make this stuff up. It is beyond insane here.
For onshore trading. After the break, we would really like to see as soon as possible the execution details on the physical spending and on the market stabilization measures. Sure. And I think the next policy event that we can pay close attention to would be towards the end of October, where we could potentially have a NPC standing committee meeting. We would like to see if there could be a physical deficit expansion occurring at that event.
Laura, what we're seeing in the market is a rebound. Would you call it a dead cat bounce or a structural reversal?
For now, I think this is a tactical rebound and a technical rebound.
Yeah, so the economy is rebounding because the banks are going to loan out more money. People are going to take out more debt, folks. It's just going to lead to more inflation. Again, they're afraid of deflation. They're afraid of a lower cost of living because that rips the veil from off of the economic illusion here. All right, but let's get into some other news here. I've got a few other things I wanted to touch on today. Actually, one more thing to touch on here. Look what happened to Chinese stocks. Chinese stocks soared the most since 2015. Of course, stimulus pumped up stock market. You see the person looking right at the bull right there here. So how do we prepare for this, folks? I've been saying this for a while. I've kind of integrated a little bit of this into my channel because I believe it's part of the financial picture, because you have to budget for preparing. And when I say prepare, I'm talking about getting canned goods, get bottled water. I've got about 20 of those big 5-gallon water jugs. I try to keep at least 10 filled up in case something happens. I'm trying to keep all 20 of them filled up now. Every time we get down just 2 or 3, I'm back to the water store where I buy this filtered water, also Berkey water filter. Tap water, go ahead and drink it, but I choose not to. Canned goods, I have more now than I've ever had, getting ready for what I think could be some fireworks coming up very, very soon. Again, part of the financial picture, folks, you got to know how much you can afford to prepare, right? I wish I had more canned goods, right? I don't have an endless amount of space. When they start getting expired, it's kind of hard to start digging through them and integrating them into the meal so they don't expire. So there's a whole kind of a routine of really preparing, not just a few canned goods in the pantry, but I'm talking about really preparing, especially if you have a family and you have mouths to feed. If we see shutdowns and rising prices will be one problem, right? Because a lot of people don't have much more credit that they can run up on their credit cards. Some people do, but a lot don't. So it's not just the prices, though, it's the shortages. What if there's actually empty shelves? And then what's going to happen to commodities? Will we see a big spike in precious metals, or will it be deflationary because people will start selling off their precious metals just to get money to buy things with because the prices of food is going to go up, right? And again, this all could be a nothing burger, right? Nothing's baked into the cake. Nothing is certain. It's all about the response, right? If things played out organically, we would have seen this whole economy wiped out over a decade ago, right? But there's intervention. There's endless money creation behind the scenes to try to keep things glued together. But the problem is now inflation has become such a problem because of all the rescues, right? We need a collapse, just like the drug addict needs to be weaned off of his drug, right? But it's not allowed to happen. It's just more highs pumped in to the veins, for lack of a better term here. More headlines here. U.S. retailers brace for potential pain from a longshoreman strike. All right, so what's going to happen? You let me know. A lot of you are probably smarter than me. Will the powers that be come in and get this solved? Or are they just not smart enough to know how devastating that this could be? I think that's very likely. Next, I meant to talk about this a few reports ago, but it's the number of CEOs resigning. Something is going on, folks. And I know that some of you are saying, well, you've talked about this before. Well, yeah, but now it just got worse. We just set another record. So when I talked about it before, what was it, last year? I haven't brought this up in a while. It got worse. Just bring it up here. CEOs quitting at record pace. CEO exits are up 50% from the same period last year, folks. Stock prices, scandals, tech problems among factors. The first 3 months of this year, more than 600 chief executive officers left their jobs, either through retirement, resignation, or being forced out. That's up 50% from last year. So when I reported that it was one of the worst times ever, it's a lot worse than that, up 50% since that, folks. So something's going on. Something big is brewing. I would say behind the scenes, but it's really not behind the scenes. If you've been watching, if you've been paying attention, we're headed for some very, very, I think, tough times, folks. So will it be kicked off on October 1st or not? I mean, please let me know down below. But I do know that it's going to be tough to make it through the end of October without something massive. We got the war thing heating up. Let me just read you some of the headlines here. Here we got Israeli tanks mass at the border of Lebanon. U.S. airstrikes on Syria killed 37 militants affiliated with extremist groups. That's right, U.S. airstrikes. I think we were one of the first channels to tell you the U.S. was going to be involved. Now, it's not just financially. It's not just they're sending money over there for weapons and sending actual weapons. It's U.S. airstrikes. Cache of Iranian missiles in Russia, folks. It doesn't stop. So the risks, black swans flying around everywhere. Please let me know what you think about all this down in the comments. Are you preparing? Or is this a big nothing burger? Are we dooming and glooming? Are we fear mongering? Folks, it's just what's in the news, man. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just letting you know what's out there and the potential outcomes by trying to kind of dissect all this and read between the lines and give you the big picture. If you like what we talk about, please make sure you subscribe. Come back to this channel. See you very soon. More than ever, keep stacking, folks. Canned goods. Get yourself some silver, some barterable goods. I would even say cash for the first if there is a big shortage situation. Even cash will be good. Small denominations of 1s and 5s make it easier to barter with, right? Instead of handing out $20 and $50 bills for a few cans of goods, you know what I mean? So keep stacking, folks. Talk to you very soon. Bye for now. Peace.